And as I was preparing for this video, I'm like, why does anybody need to know what feelings are? Because we're all feeling them all the time.
So the rope touches my left heel.
With peppers, onions.
Circadian health. More importantly, we're going to be talking about your circadian. What's going on, wellness warriors? Welcome back to the MME YouTube channel, where we're here to help you develop a healthy mind and keep your body aligned. My name is Tyler Egan, and I will be your wellness mentor and educator for today's video. And in said video, as the title implies, the thumbnail implies, as the board here implies, we're going to be talking about how to transform your emotional understanding. And a brief overview of what this means is, in today's video, what we're going to be talking about is the 4 major mental mechanisms behind how we handle our feelings. I'm going to give you a quick definition of feelings. And as I was preparing for this video, I'm like, why does anybody need to know what feelings are? Because we're all feeling them all the time. But I want to put some words to the experience that we're going through each day, so we have a working definition, so that we're all on the same page to begin with. So we're going to define feelings. We're going to be talking about, I'm going to give you the 4 major mental mechanisms, and then we're going to go into a little bit deeper those 4 major mental mechanisms. If you guys take anything from this video or any of the content we put out there, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a like on the video, drop a comment, let us know what you want to see more of, what you learned from today's video. And if you're feeling extremely ambitious, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and click the notification bell, whatever it is, so you're notified every time we put out a new video. We put out weekly videos to help you on your wellness journey. I think that's all of the hippity hoopla I got to go through as a YouTube video maker person. So let's actually get into the meat and potatoes of this video. There's gonna be timestamps too. There's timestamps for every video. So if there's anything, like if you don't want to listen to me ramble at any point, like just go, there's timestamps, so you can go down and skip ahead if you want to just get to the part where I talk about like expressing emotions and whatnot. So yeah, let's get in. Let's talk about the 4 major mental. So actually, no, I gotta take a step back. Feelings. Feelings are a pain in the ass sometimes, aren't they? I really hope I'm not alone with that, because if not, this is gonna be really awkward. So our feelings are essentially internal responses. I'm color coding the shit out of this, baby. Let's go. Responses to external stimulation or stimuli. So what does this mean? So what this means is our feelings are internal responses to external stimuli. What this means is it is your internal response. It is your internal, what is the word I'm looking for here, Tyler? The way you process internally what you are experiencing externally. And the external stimuli comes from any of the 5 senses. It's not just one or the other, you know, it's not just what you hear. Like somebody could say a triggering thing to you, but it's not just that. It couldn't, let me rephrase. It may not just be coming from what they say, but the entire structure, if you will, of the situation you're in the first place. Maybe you already had a bad morning, and all that needed to happen was your coworker had to say that one silly thing. They could have been joking, and it just set you off. You know what I mean? And so now you are internally processing that in a very negative way because you were already having a bad start to your day, right? So it's an internal response. I really want to emphasize the internal responses to the external stimuli. So the external stimulation coming from the 5 senses, our 5 senses, and the world around us. So you could be internally processing, internally responding to something you smell. Like you drive, I mean, this happens to me all the time. I'll drive past a fast food joint. I'm like, oh, that smells kind of good, you know? Or I will hear a coworker say something. I'm like, that's interesting, you know? Or I could touch them, like these leaves, right? So this is stimulation. And so what I'm feeling is, you know, the physical sensation of the touch, but like I feel the rigidness here, and it actually kind of feels calming to pick up this leaf. And now I'm finding myself even more curious about, you know, when they do studies on grounding, do they do it by just like touching a leaf or touching a rock? And that is a topic for a different day. So feelings are internal responses to external stimuli. The external stimulation coming from any of the 5 senses around us. I'm going to pause for a moment because the train just went by. And now that external stimulation infuriates me. 1, because I can't do anything about it. And 2, because it usually makes the videos loud and rowdy. And that's my internal process, my internal response to the external stimulation that I just heard, you know? So, but it could be something you see, it could be something you smell, taste, touch, any of the 5 senses. Okay, now that we have a working definition of feelings and we have a better understanding, we're all on the same page, let's move on to those 4 major mechanisms. And they are, well, we got to write 4 mechanisms first. Our 4 mechanisms, they are, number 1, suppression. It's actually kind of like suppression. Let me finish my word here. Suppression. It's kind of like 3.5, because 1 and 2, number 2 being repression, are very similar, but there is a slight difference that needs to be accounted for. So we're gonna call it 4, but it's really kind of like 3.5 because these two really go hand in hand. Number 3, expression. Express yourself. Okay, enough of that. And number 4, escape. So our 4 major mental mechanisms behind how we handle our feelings is suppression, repression, expression, and escape. So let's take a deeper dive into, we're gonna start from the top and work our way down. So we're gonna start with number 1 being suppression. So like I said, number 1 and number 2 are very similar, and I am gonna highlight the difference between the two, but just take note of this before we get into it. Most, if not all, things between the two are going to overlap, besides the one thing I will highlight for y'all. So number 1, suppression. What is suppression is consciously, the conscious choosing, if you will, consciously choosing, consciously pushing feelings aside, away, pushing them down, whatever word is going to work best for you in this scenario, but they all are true. So we can like characteristically define this as not acknowledging one's feelings. So maybe something happens at work or at home and you feel something, but you're not acknowledging it, and you're just kind of pushing it to the side. And that not acknowledging can come from just the inability to understand your own feelings or something else. So not acknowledging, avoidant or avoidance, and dismissive, to give you a few. And I want to highlight one thing as I go through this, because this is something I've worked with clients on in the past, is understanding these 4 major mechanisms. And a lot of the clients we've worked with we would learn these things, we would share the information, and they would immediately externalize it, meaning they would hear this and think of somebody else. That is something that is so clever of our fancy schmancy minds. It is something that does all the time, where we'll externalize this information to not look at it inwardly. So I want to invite you all now as we go through this to, 1, take note if your mind does that. You hear this and it's like, this sounds like that person. And notice that, because that often can be a way of suppressing, oh damn it, that can be a way of suppressing a feeling of what's happening inside. If that doesn't make sense, it might by the end. So consciously pushing feelings away, pushing them aside. Some ways we can characteristically describe this, maybe not acknowledging, avoidance, dismissive behavior. But I want to highlight this too, because in the media, in the mainstream information that's out there, like suppression is often viewed in like a negative light, and it doesn't necessarily have to be if you use this properly. Because a few other ways we can describe suppression, if used intentionally. What I mean by this is, it's a conscious choice. And let's just say you have the emotional awareness and you're like, I'm at work and I'm pissed off. It's like, okay, I am not going to process this right now because I got a million things going on. I got to deal with this person. I got that thing going on. I got to talk to this person. I got to pay for that thing. So I don't have the space to handle my own anger right now. So I'm just going to push it down. And then later I'm going to feel it. I'm going to move through that energy so that it doesn't build up later, right? So if you're intentional about suppressing your feelings, it doesn't necessarily have to be a net negative thing, like the word is often implied in our world around us. Another word is voluntary. Again, because this is a conscious choice, if you're using it intentionally, if you're using the mental mechanism of suppression intentionally, like we talked about in last week's video, if you guys watch it, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, where we talked about rewiring the mind versus the nervous system. If you haven't, there will be a link down below or a card somewhere. Go check that out, because we talked about how the mind is a fantastic servant, but it's a horrible master, right? So if we use the mind as a tool, then we can use it. We can use the mental mechanism, a tool of the mind. Okay, let me take a step back. the mental mechanism, the tool of the mind that is suppression, to intentionally push our feelings aside and handle them when we have the space, when we have the bandwidth to do it. If you're juggling 50 different things at work or at home with the kids or whatever it is, then, you know, handling your sadness, your madness, your anger, anything like that, it might need to be pushed to the side later that night when you have time to be with yourself, listen inwardly, the inner child that is trying to express itself to you, and move through that energy fully, right? So again, intentionally, voluntarily, and the last one is like contain or containment. Right, so suppression isn't necessarily a bad thing, although a lot of the time it is viewed in a negative light. So again, suppression, consciously pushing away feelings, pushing them aside, whatever. We're not acknowledging, we're avoidant, we're dismissive. Take it a step further, if you are using the mind as a tool, if you are working on rewiring the nervous system, as we talked about in an earlier video, if you haven't watched that one yet, please go check it out. After this one though, we can use this tool of the mind, that is a tool, to intentionally we can use it intentionally. We can use it. Life is happening, y'all. We got a million things going on sometimes. We live in a weird, interesting world. And so one of the things I want to highlight about this is like what happens when we continuously suppress feelings. We keep pushing them down and down. We can have a lot of ill effects on our health, whether it's mentally, physically, emotionally. So what we want to talk about here is, need a better angle, health impacts. So this can either create or exaggerate, I really hope I spelled this right, exaggerate anxiety. So again, it can create it if you never had anxiety before, but now all of a sudden you're noticing you're a lot more anxious than you used to be. Could very well be because you're suppressing emotions. Again, it's a conscious choosing of pushing these aside, but it doesn't mean that you are consciously aware of what it is that you're feeling. Like I spent most of my life, before I dive back into this, I just want to share this real fast. I spent most of my life suppressing a lot of emotions, suppressing a lot of feelings. But the thing is, like, I was unconsciously, I don't know how to explain this. I wasn't aware of my own emotions. I didn't know what I was experiencing. I didn't know how to process my emotions, my feelings. And so while I would notice that I was feeling uneasy, I would push that down. But all I could do is define it as something I didn't like. I couldn't define it as sadness, anger, depression, apathy, guilt, shame. Like I didn't know how to identify those emotional experiences within myself. So it was all just bad. And I'm just like, no, go away. You know, I just kept pushing it down. So I was consciously choosing to push it away, but I was unconscious of the emotions I was experiencing, if that makes sense. So there can be some nuance to this. So I want to highlight that because you can exaggerate or exacerbate things like anxiety, or you can create anxious patterns within you by continuously pushing them down. Okay, and a topic for a different day is actually diving deeper into all the emotions so we can create that awareness within ourselves. So if you want to see that video, drop a comment down below. Okay, so more impacts on our health besides just anxiety is we could have like emotional outbursts. So this is more along the lines of emotional health. Spelled that wrong. Outburst. Are y'all ready for this? I'm actually going to erase this so I have a little more space, but anxiety, outburst. This is where it gets good. I don't know if we took a water break, y'all. Cheers. But this is where it starts to get interesting because we're talking about just pushing feelings aside. But how does this impact our physical health? Well, you can have an increase in blood pressure. Right? If you have hypertension in your family, or maybe you already have it, you got blood pressure issues already. My question to you is, are you processing all of the things that you're feeling throughout the day? And the answer is no. I just want to create this space right now where that's okay. All right. The other thing I want to highlight here is a compromised immune function. The reason I said that about creating the space where it's okay that you're suppressing these things is because, like, in order for us to heal, first we must feel. And in order for us to feel, we have to make it okay to feel shit. As somebody who pushed down anything that was negative because I was unaware of what I was experiencing, it created a space within myself where it wasn't okay to feel anything, literally anything. And so anytime I felt guilty, I was like, no, that's not good. And it led to me constantly suppressing these things. And I actually went to the doctors to get a routine health checkup, and my blood pressure started to spike. I had high triglycerides. I had something else that was off, but my doctor never even told me about it until I saw it on my blood work. That's a topic for a different day too. So that's suppression. Now, the key difference, I'm going to leave this stuff up here because I want you guys to really understand this, but the key difference between this and repression, which is number 2, is now we are completely removing the conscious choosing of this. It is all unconscious behavior. It is unconsciously pushing feelings aside, away, down, just like come on, go away. You know, it's like it's unconsciously doing it. So when we talk about repression, we're talking more along the lines of childhood trauma, things that happened when we were children, when we had the inability to process our emotions. This could happen in adulthood. If you still, like I said, it wasn't until I was about 26, 27 years old that I finally started to understand my own emotions. So up until I was about 26, I was probably repressing a lot of things because I did not have an understanding of my own emotions. My repression is unconsciously pushing our emotions aside. This, again, I use childhood trauma as the example because that is the most predominant one, but this can happen when you're 22 as well. You know, if it's like a hyper traumatic experience, you could repress the emotions because it's so fucking heavy. It's so intense. It's such an intense emotional experience that like you do not have the capacity, the ability to process the feelings, handle the feelings. You don't have the ability to hold space for those feelings, so you just push them down because they're too heavy, they're too dense. This is, again, very predominant when we're children. I'm gonna erase this though, because we just don't have the ability yet, and maybe our parents don't either. One of the reasons repression can be so predominant as children is not only do we not have the ability to process our emotions, but our parents do not have the ability to help us process our emotions, therefore leading to repressing these feelings, these emotions, and the latter can ensue. And then we get into adulthood and we don't even have an understanding of our own emotions, and then it's just like, well, what the hell do I do? And you just suppress everything. With the example I gave about myself earlier. So repression, the only difference really between the two is unconsciously pushing away versus consciously choosing to do it. And a lot of the same things can be applied. You could be, if you're more repressive, you could be more avoidant, dismissive and whatnot, but there's no intentionality, as I shared with suppression. There's no intentionality. There's no, what was the other word you used? Voluntary. There's none of that when it comes to repression. It's just straight up unconsciously pushing them down because we just lack the resources, the ability, the capability to handle and or process our emotions. And I guess I said there's only one thing, but here I am contradicting myself already. That is the key difference between repression versus suppression. But a few other things that I want to highlight among this childhood trauma, right? That's a big one, or just, traumatic experiences as a whole, especially like really intense ones. Like, I'm gonna throw something out there. I don't mean to trigger anybody by saying this, but like the trains going by, like rape or being mugged, being shot. Like, if you were in war, PTSD, that kind of stuff, like that's some heavy fucking shit, right? So I'm gonna just take a moment and honor that. I don't mean to dismiss it or throw it under the rug, but it's the truth. And repression can come from very heavy traumatic experiences like that. Now, with repression, I guess there's a little bit more to it than just the unconscious pushing away of it all. So when it comes to our health, it can lead to being disconnected. This is more with like a social aspect. Like, you feel like there's something wrong with you because you can't connect with other people. And if you know what I mean, you know what I mean. It's like you don't know why, but you feel like there's something wrong with you. And no matter what you logically or rationally say up here, that feeling doesn't go away. And that's because there are emotions, there are feelings deep down in here. And I actually put my hands here on purpose, deep down in here, that have never been fully moved through, never been fully processed or coped with. And so they're just down here, controlling us, controlling our actions, like a puppet master behind the scenes. And it leads to this level of disconnection. No matter what you do, no matter what you say, you just feel a level of disconnectedness. There's something wrong with you that you can't explain, right? This can manifest itself in the realm of, well, depression, right? Unexplained physical symptoms. So what do I mean by this? What we're talking about here, symptoms. What we're talking about here is like random ass joint pain. Out of nowhere, you just one day wake up and you have neck pain and it doesn't go away. At first you're like, I slept wrong, and then a week later it's still there. And maybe it goes away for like a day, but then like 2 months later it comes back to like even worse. And you don't know why. You go to the doctor, you tell them what happened, they're like, no, that doesn't make any sense. I don't know what to say. They don't have an answer for you, right? They don't have an answer for you because our system, our healthcare system as it is, doesn't dive into the world of our emotions and how that energy being trapped inside of the body can manifest itself in reality. So then we have these physical symptoms like headaches, migraines that there is no explanation for, like GI issues, like gut distress, your bowel movements are off, and like I said, joint pain that there's no explanation for. Your doctor can't help you, but yet you like it's a real thing. You know it's happening, but you don't know what's causing it. It's repressed shit. There we go, dropping marks again. Repressed emotions from the past that have never been fully processed, felt, heard, seen, and loved. I'm just gonna stop for a moment and just say that. Because as I say that, I feel my own inner child right now. Like I feel a little emotional because I repressed a lot of things as a child. A lot of feelings of guilt and shame, embarrassment, that unfortunately I didn't have anybody to help me process those. As a 7-year-old, I didn't have the ability to either. And so it led to a disconnection with me and many of the people around me. It led to a disconnection with myself and myself. You know what I mean? And so it led to unexplained physical symptoms for me. And I've worked with so many different clients in the past that had these unexplained physical symptoms. Their doctors could not help them. They didn't know why. Some of them were willing to sit in the fire and start to work through some of the repressed emotions from their past. Some of them couldn't. Some of them didn't know how. Some of them, whatever it was, you know? And so there's something I want to share to kind of really drive this point home. These unexplained symptoms coming from repressed emotions. The body expresses what the mind represses. Or we could also say suppresses. Right? Because again, like they are rather interchangeable things, suppression and repression. They go hand in hand quite, there's a lot of similarities, I'll say, but there are some nuanced differences, right? So the body expresses what the mind represses, what the mind suppresses. Okay, so now let's move on. That was like the first section, the first half of the video is kind of heavy, like the suppressing. It doesn't necessarily have to be as much, but repression can be really heavy. Like if there's unresolved childhood trauma that you have never been able to move through, maybe you went to a therapist, you worked with a coach, a mentor, and it was just like it's still, you know, you're just having a hard time. It's or maybe you have, and like even with myself, what I shared earlier, it's like I still feel the heaviness around those emotions, around that energy. I'm getting the chills right now because there's a part of me that knows how real that is. And right now I am expressing, so we're going to go right into the next one, which is number 3, expression. I am expressing what I am feeling right now. And this one is number 3, expression. What's up, everyone? As you can see on the board, I just wrote here, part 2 will be next week. So this is future Tyler right now. I completed the video. I went through everything that we talked about, that we discussed in the very beginning of the video. I went through all of it. And I realized the video is like 50 minutes long. And I don't want to make anybody sit through a 50-minute video. And this is probably for the best. So what I'm going to do is I'm cutting the video in half. So if you really enjoyed this content and you're ready to take a deep dive even more so, we're going to leave the part 1 here. You can digest it and then come back next week where we'll go over part 2, where we dive deeper into escape and expression a little bit more. All right, so if you haven't already, please leave a like and a comment on the video. And if you are looking forward to part 2, make sure you subscribe and click the notification bell. That way you'll be notified when our next video comes out, which will complete this. All right, that's it, y'all. Peace out. I'll see you next week.
So the rope touches my left heel.
With peppers, onions.
Circadian health. More importantly, we're going to be talking about your circadian rhythm.